and welcome back to the Warwick F1 show. I'm your host this week, Chinmay, Baratia, and it's another non-race weekend, so I thought it would be a good idea just to quickly, a few weeks ago we did rate some drivers according to their performances in the first 4 races of the season, and now it's been a few more races. Now we're about a third of the way through the season, and we kind of had a much more better view of how the drivers have actually performed and how we just had a much better order of the pecking order. So I thought it would be a good time to quickly just review the ratings and thought also give our extra thoughts on the actual constructors themselves, how they've been doing as a constructor as a whole, to just combine strategies, both drivers, and just their performance of the car in general. And obviously I can't do this on my own, so today I've got 2 guests with me. First we've got Elijah. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well, Chinmay. Glad to be back on the podcast. It's been a while.
Yep, same here. And we also have a new guest today with Niccolo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. And so, basically what we'll just do, we'll just go through each of the constructors. We'll just talk about the drivers, basically just look over what we rated before according to the first 4 races of the season. And basically now we'll also take Miami, Spain and Monaco into consideration. Basically just go over the new ratings. Just rate it out of 10 basically. So I think we might as well just start from the bottom. We'll just start with Williams and get the easy one, Nicholas Latifi. He's just not had a great season, has he?
No.
Yeah, he struggled a lot this season. More than I thought he would, to be honest. I think last season he had his performance obviously in comparison to George was better than probably most people expected, especially in the races. And this season he seems to have gone backwards again. He's struggled a lot with just keeping the car on the track, really. He's had too many incidents, silly ones, a lot of them going off by himself. He hasn't been particularly good in the races. He's been beaten by Albon fairly comfortably. He hasn't looked like he's had potential to get points so far. If I was to rate Latifi's season out of 10, I think I'd give him probably a 3. And that's probably being kind to him, to be honest.
Yeah. What would you rate his season out of 10?
I would completely agree with him. Probably a bit more than a 3, up to a 4 or a 5. I'm normally kind when I give grades to people, but as he said, there's been no instances in which he has demonstrated to be possibly even worthy of a seat in F1, no? In some cases.
Yeah, I think I have to completely agree. We've had 3 more races and Latifi's just done nothing to show that he's actually made any form of improvement. It's not just a rough patch. I think it's just genuinely had a rubbish season all year. I think last time we gave him a 3 out of 10. I think we're pretty much, you give him a 4, you give him a 3. I would probably give him a bit lower with the 2 now, because right now we've given him, but that's what we just did. That's just all the orders that we gave last time. And last time we gave 3 out of 10. I think I might drop into a 2 because he's just been so poor, personally speaking, in the last 7 races now. And it's just really, really doubting my ability to really believe in that Latifi can do anymore. So I think it pretty much just stick to 3 out of 10, really. Yeah. So I think we can quickly move it over to his teammate as well, because he's done a much better job. He's Alex Albon. The redhead initially did give him a lot of success, 2 points finishes. But what do you think of his Niccolo?
Well, I have to say I'm a bit biased in my opinion, being a Ferrari fan. What happened last week in Monaco surely does not help my opinion towards him, because constantly ignoring blue flags for what was basically 1 lap doesn't make any sense for a driver which is competing for the lowest team in F1 right now. But he's surely better than his teammate. He is a talent in F1, one of the younger ones, but he needs to understand that he's not driving for a top team anymore, so he's driving for a Williams. So I would agree with the grade you gave him last time, which was a 7, but probably a bit lower now, a 6, because of the performance.
I mean, what do you think, Elijah? How has he done?
I mean, I've actually been quite impressed by him this season. I mean, so it's hard to know exactly how well he's doing because obviously if you compare him relative to his teammate, he's been head and shoulders above him in pretty much every race. But I mean, a few drives stand out. The one at Australia, I think when he got into the points from last and made the hard tyre work, like, was it 50 odd laps or something like that?
Yeah, he literally pitted on the last lap.
Yeah, and that was an incredible drive. That's a show of brilliant tyre management, and he made some great moves during that race as well. He was good around Imola as well. Just think he finished just outside the points there, but I think he's done better than I expected. I mean, I've always thought he's a good talent, good driver, but I think he's definitely been getting the best out of that Williams, which it looks like it's not the easiest car to drive at the best of times, and the quali pace isn't very good. So but he's got the car into Q2 quite a few times, which is pretty good. So I think I'd probably give him a 7 out of 10. I think steady so far for him.
Yeah, I think I would agree there. I think my opinions of Albon have not changed since then, since a few races ago, and I think he did make that very bad mistake of holding up Leclerc for 16 blue flags. I'm surprised he didn't get penalised for that, to be honest. But he should have a bit more awareness than that, but I don't think that really is enough to really show away from the fact that he is really outperforming at Williams, especially compared to his teammate, and in what is probably the slowest car on the grid this year. Unfortunately for Williams, we did expect a big step up, but I think at the end of the day, I think I also give him a 7 out of 10 because he's just done a solid job since he's come back. I mean, he has been hindered the last couple of races. I think, was it Spain? He had floor damage as well, so he was pretty much just a sitting duck the whole race, and he has still got 2 points finishes in the Williams, so I think that's definitely a respectable start to the season. So I think, you gave him a 7 as well, didn't you, Niccolo?
Yep.
So I think that will give us a good 7 out of 10. So I think just rating Williams as a whole, how do you think they've done?
I think for what was expected of them coming into the season, it's obviously their package hasn't been competitive enough, and obviously that's made it difficult for the drivers now because the expectations, they're dependent on where the car performance is, and I think that in terms of how they've done with the package that they've got, I think they've actually done quite well to get 2 points finishes this season with Alex Albon. I think their strategy's been quite good at times. They've taken gambles and they've worked. So I think it's a tricky one because, again, you have Latifi. You don't know, we don't know how quick or slow that car actually is because, again, there's such a massive gap between Latifi and his teammate. Maybe the car isn't as bad as Latifi's making it look, but it's still, one of the lesser performing cars on the grid. So considering the package that they have, I think I can't give them too high because obviously they've not produced a good enough package. So I think giving them anything more than a 5-6 would be generous. I think I'd probably stick with a 5. I'd probably give them a 5 to this season so far.
Yeah, I mean, how would you rate there, considering how we expected this year as well for them?
I would go with exactly the same grade.
Fair enough.
Nothing more to add to that.
Yeah, I think, I'll be honest, I'll be a bit harsh. I'll kind of give it a 4 out of 10, only because I kind of just expected Williams to really step it up this year. I mean, they're really high. I mean, especially the upwards trend they had in the last couple of years with Jos Capito coming into the team and really turning around his fortunes, and the fact that Russell got the podium. Yes, it was a questionable podium because it happened in Spa last year, which wasn't a race. But I think given what we kind of expected for Williams this year, I kind of just have to go with the 4 out of 10. So I think averaging that out, that would end up being like a 4.66 out of 10. But there's not much we can do about that. I hope they really, really step it up. So I think we can move up to P9 in the Constructors' Championship. Probably the most disappointing team, Aston Martin. We can start with Lance Stroll, who we gave him a 6 out of 10, 6.3 out of 10. How would you rate him?
Lance Stroll as a driver he's a tricky one to to look at, because like his F1 career so far has been quite strange. I mean, he's had like glimpses of pace where he's looked like he might, there's talent there. You can see that there's talent there, but he struggles to put it all together. He has, really good race weekends where he, might be up in P8 having a great race, and then he has race weekends where he qualifies P18 and struggles down the order. I think this season he's done okay. He hasn't been like exceptionally bad or exceptionally good. I think that, rating him a 6, I think that I probably dropped that down to a 5 maybe now. But I don't know where his F1 career is really going, to be honest. I think that the only reason he's still there is to be honest, obviously because of his father. And like looking at the Aston Martin project, I just don't know where Lance Stroll fits in going into the future. If he wasn't, of course, the son of Lawrence. So he's I think he's a tricky one, but I think I'd probably stick to a 5 for him.
Okay, fair. Niccolo, anything to add there?
Not much to add, only that it's probably in the same category of drivers as Albon or as maybe Schumacher, which we will go on talking about later. It's 2 or 3 drivers which are in F1, but you think, wouldn't it be better to put in new people, either younger drivers or drivers that used to be in F1, bring them back? It just doesn't, as you said before, make much sense to have them in a Formula 1 team, which should be the top of motorsport, but in some cases you look at it and are like, maybe there's another driver in another race category or racing on another championship that could be well in his place.
Yeah, fair. I think, you got both of you raise very valid points that I haven't got much to add as well. He's just there, isn't he? He's just there. There's nothing special about Lance. He's just there because of his dad, and really, I just don't know how he's still in the sport, to be honest. But just give him a 5 out of 10. He hasn't done anything special this year. He hasn't been atrocious compared to previous years, but definitely he's definitely not put.
He's a talented driver. He's done his things in the past, but maybe there's a point in which one has to choose what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Pole position in Turkey 2020 was probably prime example of Lawrence Stroll's talent.
Wasn't there also a second place in Monza a while back, or first place?
He got second place. He was second in, I think it was a second or third in Monza 2020. No, third in Monza 2020, because it was a Gasly and Sainz on the podium. Still one. Still a very good podium, to be honest. But the thing is, just he just doesn't show it on a consistent basis. I think that's just the problem. Whereas, as we probably move on to Sebastian Vettel, he's really put some strides in. Yes, he had a very shaky start to the year, COVID, and then Australia had binned the car like 300 times that whole weekend. But then ever since then, I think he's really shown glimpses of the old Vettel. He's nowhere near in a championship contending car. The car is going to, at best, in lower points. But I think he's just really shown how he's definitely stepped it up again this year.
He's a great driver for sure, but looking at it from a bigger picture from behind, I think I agree with some journalists that the time has come for him. It's a shame to see a driver who has won 4 championships, had the chance of winning other 2 with Ferrari, now driving for a team that most of the time doesn't reach the points on a car which he doesn't particularly like, because he said it many times that he doesn't enjoy these cars from the new regulation. I think it would be good for him to say, you know what, I've demonstrated what I can do, because he's done that with Red Bull in the past and with Ferrari later on, but he was a bit unlucky there. And it's just time for him to say goodbye and come back later with a different project or go race. He seems to go more on and on about sustainability, so I'm sure Formula E would be happy to have him or another alternative championship to F1.
Yeah, anything to add there?
I basically completely agree with him. I feel like, I've felt that for maybe a few years now that he should, consider maybe calling it a day, because it's not really, he's not still a capable driver. He's a 4-time champion for a reason, Sebastian Vettel, but I think that he's another one where I just feel like the time has come where, you know, there are younger drivers, there are other drivers in other categories who are waiting for their chance, who some of them won't get their chance in F1. And I feel like he's done a good job this season. Like, if I was rating him on this season alone, I'd probably give him like somewhere maybe a 6 or probably a 7. I think he's done really solid. But in terms of like his, you know, where he stands right now in his F1 career, I just think that I don't know if I see that hunger in him to really get back to, you know, challenging right at the sharp end. And like a driver like Sebastian Vettel, it doesn't make sense to me seeing him fighting for P10, P11. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and well, to be honest, there is actually a really good chance that he could retire at the end of this year. I mean, just looking at, you know, recent stuff he's done, like Question Time, when he's just really questioned. He's actually really started to question his stance, him actually being in F1 now, because he is not in a team that is going to be competing. He's not even competing for regular points. Let's be honest. Aston Martin has done miserably in the last couple of years, very underwhelming with their performances, as we'll go on to in a sec. But yeah, I think Vettel he's just past it now, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah. What would you give him a rating out of 10 then? We rated him 7 last time.
I still keep that same.
Yeah, I'm okay with giving the same. I think it's cool, even if it messes up the schedule, to segue into another equally old driver, but which in my opinion is impressing, is Fernando Alonso. Yeah. Which he's had 2 years of a break, but now he's coming back. You can see he's having loads of fun compared to Vettel, and he's impressing too. So I mean, he's 41, and when I talk about Alonso, I always enjoy comparing him. It's like him, Ibrahimovic, and Federer from tennis. They're all old in their sport, but they all enjoy what they're doing, and they still give spectacle to whoever is watching. And I think it's exactly the same thing. Like, he knows the car is pretty good. Also, they've changed management and everything, so it works, and he's enjoying the whole experience a lot without any pressure to demonstrate that he has to actually achieve something.
Yeah, exactly. I think you pretty much just said it completely perfectly there. So I think probably just looking at Aston Martin as a whole, what do you want to rate? Because it's just the funny thing is, Aston Martin, they're the perfect teams. They always show that they're delivering so much, but then they deliver so little. They're one of those teams that just really are underwhelming as a team. But honestly, what would you give them a rating out of 10 if you were to?
Honestly, I'm tempted to rate them lower than Williams, and it's just because it's so disappointing. Like, there's so much expectation and promise from them last season, especially this season coming into the new regs. You know, there was so much hype about their new car. It first released and it looked great, and it was really radical car design, and people were saying, is this going to be the Brawn of 2022?
Yeah.
More like the McLaren of Lewis Hamilton's days. Was it 2008?
Yeah.
2009, sorry.
Yeah.
When they produced an awful car. More like that. It's just not giving the drivers the confidence they need to be able to push it. I feel like they've just done such a poor job as a team in the last year or so. And I can't give them any more than a 5. I think that's the high. And honestly, I think I'd give them maybe a 4.
Yeah, I was going to give them a 4 as well. What do you think?
I agree with you too, and there's probably a deeper reasoning behind it. I feel influenced. Surely, I still haven't watched this season, but past season of Drive to Survive, when you saw Lawrence and the way he behaved with Otmar during the season, and you could see that Lawrence is not an easy boss to work with at all.
Yeah.
And instead Otmar had this really nice team, which at the time was Force India, and which worked really well with no budget, no nothing, with the Mercedes engine.
Yeah.
And instead right now it's a shame, because it was a very interesting team. to look at, because it was always fighting up in the points, P6, P7.
Yeah.
But now it's a bit of a shame to see them down there.
Yeah, it's like, I like to think Lawrence Stroll just tries too much to be a Bond villain. That's all it is. It's just he tries to fill up that persona all the time. But
it's as if every time Ferrari lost, then the Agnelli family came back and got angry to everyone. When in the end they just put the money and they have no skill in the actual F1. So
because Aston Martin haven't even got money issues to blame because of Lawrence Stroll and the recent injection of Mercedes, Aston Martin themselves coming in new sponsorship because of Aston Martin. And then obviously the Stroll Consortium. But yeah, I think, to be honest, a 4 out of 10 is probably just being the most optimistic we can always think of. So just to go over what we did, we went over Williams and Aston Martin. We gave Latifi a 3 out of 10. We just know he has not performed. We given Albon a 7 out of 10 because despite a lack of ignorance of blue flags, I think he's still done a very respectable job. Sebastian Vettel, we also gave a 7 out of 10, but obviously we think we should move on now. And Lance Stroll, why is he still here? 5 out of 10. So, but yeah, and then so we basically just give Williams and Aston Martin 5 and 4 out of 10, just because they're there. They're not really, obviously they're at the bottom of the pack. They're not really going anywhere. And we doubt they'll really be going anywhere in the next couple of years. So yeah, it'll be time to take a quick break before we move on to the next two teams in the Constructors' Championship. And welcome back to the Warwick F1 show. And so I think we'll just continue on to PA in the Constructors with Haas. They've had a very good start this season, but now they seem to be slipping a lot. And I think a lot of it is to do with somebody's ability to hit the wall a lot. And it's already cost probably maybe as much as $2 million in damages just with collisions alone with Mick Schumacher. I mean, he's just not had a good season, has he? Is there two ways about it?
I expected a lot more from him coming into this season, especially. His rookie year was tricky to judge how he done because obviously he was up against Mazepin, who probably wasn't good enough for Formula One, if we're honest. Unfortunate the way that he left the sport or was kicked out the sport, but he wasn't good enough to be there in the first place. But he's just not had, I can't remember the last clean race he had. Like, properly clean, good race where he, scores points, because the Haas car has the pace to be in the points more often than not. It's just, every weekend he seems to be in the wall somewhere or having an incident with someone or off the pace. I don't want to judge him too early because obviously, he might improve. He probably will improve. Hopefully he improves as the season goes on. But in terms of how he's done so far this season, he's had a nightmare, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
And if I have to be really honest, I think I'm struggling to give him anything above a 3 because he's not been on the track enough.
Yeah. I think, because we were all quite optimistic though. We gave him a 4.75 out of 10 because the first 4 races weren't too bad. Yes, he had that really bad shot in Saudi Arabia, so we couldn't really rate him for that. But I think he's just nowhere near the pace of Kevin Magnussen. And yes, and the fact is we all expect him, Schumacher, to at least bring the fight to Magnussen this year, but it's just, the gap is just ridiculously too large, isn't it, Niccolo?
I completely agree. You have to compare Mick to his teammate, and when you see that Mick has 0 points and his teammate 15 this season, as you said, you can see that the car has all the potential to score points, and it's unfortunate because finally Haas has got a good car this year, and Mick isn't good enough for the car or for the team. It's also very sad I think everyone wanted the romantic story of Mick Schumacher being the son of Michael and being able to score points, etc. But it isn't the case, and it will be very hard at a certain point in the next 2 years or maybe less to say you're not good enough for this, maybe there's someone else who wants to get in instead of you, especially because as Haas has finally got a good car, you want to put a good driver into such a car.
I mean, Günther Steiner has already given his first actual warning to Schumacher about his needs to start performing, because the fact that Haas is pretty much the most financially tight grid on the grid, because they've had the biggest financial issues, and plus they haven't had the best luck responses and stuff. 2019 we were talking about Rich Energy. Last year we were talking about last year, and earlier this year we had the whole thing with Mazepin and Uralkali, and mainly because of the Russian invasion. But it's been a very tough time for Haas, and I don't think Mick Schumacher just really doing anything to help. So, well, I mean, obviously you gave your 3 out of 10.
It's a 3 as well.
So, I mean, of all the drivers, I think he's had the biggest dip in the last 3 races alone. I think it's just no way.
Yeah.
Whereas Kevin Magnussen, despite having a whole year out in the sport and literally he joined the grids literally about a week before the season started, he's had a very, very good start in comparison. I think he's been a bit unlucky. I mean, he collided with Lewis in Spain, and obviously he's had the odd mechanical issue here, and I think he had a mechanical issue in the last race as well, that as usual was not shown by the TV direction in Monaco, which is surprise. But yeah, I think he's done a very decent job. What do you think?
Maybe unpopular opinion, I really like Magnussen as a driver. He's a good driver. He demonstrates that he still needs to be in F1. It's a case on a much lower level. He's like Perez. No, he was close to leaving the sport. He actually left the sport, and then he was called back in an emergency situation because Haas wasn't sure what they had to do with a driver, so they called him in. I bet he's very cheap. He doesn't cost Haas an awful lot of money, and he's bringing in a lot of points. So yeah, I would give him a 7.
Yeah,
I think the decision to bring him back into F1, back to Haas, was a very good one in the first place from Günther Steiner, because he's always been a pretty dependable driver in the sense of, like, solid point scoring when he's had the ability to do so with the right car, with the right package. And he's obviously proven to be a very, very quick driver. I think he started the season extremely well. I mean, was it P5?
He says finished at P5 or P6. Yeah. I mean, there was a little lock because of the Red Bull double DNF.
You have to be there.
It's racing. Double DNF doesn't mean anything. You still finish P5.
Exactly.
It's excellent. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think, he's obviously had a bit of a rougher time last few races, but, I think that I always expected that to happen in terms of, like, Haas's performance was going to slightly slide down as the season goes on. Yeah. Hopefully they can just stay stable in the midfield and just be fighting for points. But I think he's done a very good job. I mean, so he obviously had that incident with Lewis in Spain, which was obviously unfortunate. He also had the potential to have a very good race there as well. I think I'd probably give him. I'm decided between a 7 and an 8. I think I give him a 7.
Fair.
I think he's had a good season.
Yeah, okay. I think, to be honest, I would be a bit optimistic. I will give him an 8, because I also think Magnussen's done a very, very good job, considering he's had a year out in the sport. And yes, we talk about Haas, is a proven point scoring car, but especially in the last few races, he's not had the best luck in the world, and he's really been pushing the car beyond its limit. I think, don't forget, Haas is the only car that Haas's car is the only car that's here so far that not to be actually properly upgraded so far, and it does actually suffer from a lot, and it has a lot of race pace issues, particularly with porpoising. We talk about Mercedes porpoising, but Haas actually has the worst porpoising of any vehicle in the race, especially towards the end of the race. And the thing is, the fact that Magnussen's had that start to season, he's got 15 points for Haas, which is, I think, much, much, much better than compared to what they Günther Steiner and Co were literally expecting to have, even though they did sacrifice the whole of last year. I really think he does deserve to get an 8 out of 10, more just because he's just made his mark in the sport already, just being there. So, but yeah. I mean, so what would you rate Haas out to as a team in general, just with how they've performed this year compared to expectations? if you were to?
I think a 7.
Yeah, 7. Fair. Yeah, I agree with that as well. So that pretty much leaves us. And then P7, we got kind of one of the more ambiguous teams on the grid, AlphaTauri. Because obviously we have high expectations because they've had such a good upward streak with Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda hopefully stepping up, which he has this year. I think we must stop with Tsunoda anyway. He's had despite the car dropping back on the pecking order compared to last year, I think Tsunoda's really he's really stepped up his game this year. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. He got in last year and was very impressive, and he just keeps delivering on what he has to do.
Yeah, he's been very. He's made a big step up this season. Last season, he obviously he showed glimpses of there being a good driver, there a fast driver, and I mean, he had a lot of struggles throughout the season in terms of not being quick enough in qualifying. I mean, in comparison to his teammate last season, and that's changed this season. I think this season he's out-qualified his teammate quite a few times. He's been very solid in the races, less incidents, a lot more clean, some very good overtakes, showing his racecraft. He's always had good racecraft from F2 to now. And I think he's been one of the more impressive drivers on the grid this season in terms of the step up he's made from last season to this season. I like Magnussen, I'm between a 7 and 8. I think I would give him an 8, to be honest. I think he's been really good. Fair
enough. Yeah, I think that's a pretty respectable. What would you give out of 10? So
for Tsunoda 7 or 8.
7. Okay. I mean, I was just looking at the quali battle. I mean, I think Gasly was out-qualified Tsunoda all but once or twice last year, whereas this year we've had 7 races. Tsunoda didn't qualify in Saudi Arabia because he had a drivetrain issue, but it's 3-3 at the moment. Tsunoda, I mean, yeah, arguably Gasly has stepped back this year, but Tsunoda has definitely stepped up this year, and I think he is worthy of a very, very respectable 7 out of 10 in my opinion. And I think he's just surpassed expectations, especially owing to last year's tendency to crash his front wing a lot. But yeah, I think 7 out of 10 also sounds really good, so that will end up being a 7.3 out of 10 pretty much, 7 1/3. And what about Gasly? Because he hasn't had the sort of comeback kid season compared to the last couple of years.
I really like Gasly. I mean, he's one of my favorite drivers on the grid. I think he's a very, very good driver, but he's not had a good season so far, to be honest. He's obviously made a big step back from last season. Obviously, some of that is obviously car dependent. This car is capable of getting him as high up into the top 10 as last year's car was. And I mean, AlphaTauri taking a step back hasn't surprised me, because I kind of expect that coming into the season. I thought that they get, their package wouldn't be as good as some of the other midfield teams around them, like Alpine. And I do still think that Pierre will bounce back this season. I think he'll find his form. He's too good a driver not to. But rating him in terms of so far this season, I think for a driver of his quality, I think he'd be very fortunate of me to give him anything higher than a 5. I think I'd have to go for maybe a 4. Ooh. I think for his standards, I think he's been poor.
Ooh, pretty harsh, yeah. I think, but fair enough. What do you think?
He hasn't impressed, but I wouldn't go on to give him a 4. He still has outperformed his teammate in the race, and I mean, he will impress later on in the season for sure. As you said, he's a great driver, so he will show that later on in the season for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just having a look at the standings as well. I mean, Tsunoda is 12th with 11 points. Gasly only has 6. But
Sorry, I did mix up the teammates. Yeah, I got an issue there. Yeah, so my opinion does change because I confused I confused.
That's all right.
Yeah, I confused Gasly's teammate, and so he deserves a lower grade because of that. I didn't see that, and I honestly didn't think that whilst watching the races. I wasn't thinking that Gasly would be so much down in the championship, but no, it's probably a 5 or a 4 because he should do much better compared to his teammate because he's such a better driver compared to him.
Yeah, I think just owing to the expectations we've had of Gasly, there's no two ways about it. I'll give a 5 out of 10 as well. It's not much really you can do. Mm-hmm. It's not much really we can talk about Gasly other than he's just not there. But AlphaTauri has not really just been up there compared to the last couple of years. They've really dropped down the order. Like they were P7 in the standings compared to fighting for P5 or maybe in P4 at some points of the season in the last couple of years. What would you kind of judge their performance in general then?
Not great, but not disastrous. I think they've just been one of those teams. I mean, it always happens with new regulations. You just get some teams excel, some teams do really poorly, and other teams, especially with the way the midfield is so tight and has been for the last few years, I think it is quite easy for teams to go from being, best of the rest, as we say, to potentially, finding themselves towards the back end of the grid or back end of the midfield, let's say. So I wouldn't be too harsh on AlphaTauri. I think that they are, I suppose, where I expect them to be, maybe a place lower, but they are around where I expect them to be, generally. So I think, in terms of this season so far, they'd obviously be quite disappointed with the way it's gone, but I think I'd probably give them a 5.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, 5.
Nothing more to
I can take a 5. Saves, always just save putting weird decimal points on the scores as well, on the average score. But yeah, I think, to be honest, there's not much really we can talk more about AlphaTauri, and just hopefully they step up really they did on this year. So just go back over, we rated Haas 7 out of 10, AlphaTauri at 5 out of 10. Basically just talking about how Schumacher is just really cracking under pressure. Magnussen hasn't. Gasly and Tsunoda, they've pretty much just been on par, and Gasly just underperformed, to be honest. So, and
Magnussen hasn't, probably because he has nothing to demonstrate to anyone.
Yeah,
he's just there enjoying it, and he's performing because of that.
Yeah, probably. It's probably like Kimi last year. Like Kimi's got nothing to prove. He's just there because he likes racing.
Exactly.
Pretty same with him. Well, and probably you can argue the same about Bottas. Speaking of Bottas, after the break we will talk about Alfa Romeo, and we will be talking about Alpine as well, because they're P5 and 6 respectively in the constructors championships. And now we'll just move on quickly to P7 and P6 in the standings. No, P6 and P5 in the standings, actually. I can't do maths. But, we'll start with Alpine because they are second in the championship. They've just pretty much been the most midfield team in the whole grid, haven't they? I mean, Fernando Alonso is... How is he still doing this at 41 years old? How has he still got that much pace? But, I mean, what do you think, Elijah?
Fernando?
Yeah.
He's just enjoying his racing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Ever since he's come back into the sport, he's just been like a different Fernando Alonso. Less stressed, it doesn't seem like he's putting any much pressure on himself. He's just enjoying his role within the team as, he is the experienced one in the team, the leader, in terms of helping Ocon develop as well, and helping the car to develop too. And I mean, he's had incredible pace at times. I mean, the Australian Grand Prix, he was on course probably to qualify, definitely in the top 5 there, and unfortunately had that unfortunate mechanical failure. Oh, sorry, he had the issue in the crash, obviously, yeah. I mean, he's been quite unlucky this season. He's had a couple of mechanical failures, hasn't he? And he's had he's had some reliability problems. So his where he is in the standings is probably not representative of where he actually how well he's performed this season. I mean, I'd rate him probably a 7. I think he's been pretty quick, been quite unlucky. I think that the results will come later for him in the season as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I've given my opinion on Fernando before, like at the start of the podcast, and I agree. He has no pressure whatsoever to demonstrate what he can do, so he's just enjoying it, and luckily he's performing at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and it's great to have him in the sport as well, I think.
Yeah, I think just having the legends of Fernando is just really good at boosting Formula One as an entity. And, you know, he's 41, he's still performing, he's still definitely performing for where he should be performing. And I don't think we can really expect much else from Fernando. Like you both said, he's just got no pressure at all, and it's just really it's not really much to say. I think I also agree. I'll probably give him 6, mainly because I think just unluckiness, and also he has made mistakes. Like probably the biggest one is the qualifying lap in Australia, where he could have put the car on the front row, maybe even pole position, because that lap was going stupendously well. But I think I may be being a bit harsh with 6, but I think he definitely can. He's definitely had bad luck, but I think he could have done. There's places where he could have done better. And you gave it 7 as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
7 and 7 and 6. It's pretty much the same as what we gave last time. We gave it 6.75. And also we'll kind of move on to his teammate Esteban Ocon, because he's had a bit of a mixed bag season as well. Because he's had good performances, but he's also had he's made a lot of silly mistakes. Probably Monaco, the last races, where he just for some reason decided he wants to get revenge for Albon colliding into Hamilton. But what do you think of Ocon so far?
See, I like Ocon as a driver. I think he's a pretty solid driver. He's been a solid driver ever since he's come into F1. I think there's a lot of potential there, I think, to make the step up. To that next grade of driver, because I wouldn't put him in the same category as, like, your Norrises or Sainz or anything like that. I'd put him slightly lower than that. But I mean, in terms of this season, he's had some good moments. He's had some very consistent races, but he's also had a couple of quite slightly shaky races as well. But I think that, much like his teammate, I think he's obviously been a bit more consistent. He's been a bit luckier in terms of reliability. I think he's just had a decent season so far. Nothing more than that. Maybe just I'd probably give him like a 6 or 7 as well. I think he's just been solid.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Solid, I think, is the right word. Reliable also.
Yeah.
He's there and he does the job.
Exactly. Yeah. The thing is, just both Alpine drivers, they're just doing what they can, to be honest. The car's not the fastest in the grid. It's nowhere near the most reliable. I mean, to be honest, I think Bajaski did say this year that they're not looking at reliability. They're looking at straight out pure performance of the car, which, if it does cost them a couple of retirements, so be it. But I think Alpine has done a very solid job this year. I mean, yes, P6 in the standings is not representative, to be honest, but I don't think there's much more they could have done with the performance of the car so far. So what would you give? What would you judge that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's not much more they could have really done so far. I think they've pretty much kind of maximized what they can do with the package they have this season. I mean, their cars, I mean, they've had some weekends where they've been very, very quick. I think around Jeddah, they were pretty quick around there. If Ocon and Alonso weren't tripping over each other, they probably would have had a better result as well there. So you can see that there's potential with the car when they get it working, when they get the tires into the right window. The car can be quick. It could be, up in that top 6. I think there's a bit more to come from them, actually. I think later in the season we might see a few really good results. I think maybe you might see Ocon or Alonso on the podium at some point. Yeah. I think that between a 6 and a 7, I think I'd probably give him a 6. To be fair, I think that should be solid team.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I think that they're where they were expected to be. Probably, then we're going to talk about them later. Alfa Romeo is going over their expectation, but Alpine, at least I was expecting them to be 5th or 6th. Surely not any higher than that.
Yeah, fair. I don't think there's much to add there. I think they've just done a solid job. They've just met expectations in the midfield, very in the midfield, and probably it's also thanks to the team manager, because he's great at it, Otmar. Yeah,
what he's done with Force India, and now he's bringing it to Alpine.
Probably my only criticism is sometimes he just likes to run his mouth a little bit, but
yeah,
I think most of the team principals do that. Cough, cough, Christian Horner. But oh well. But I think we'll move on to Alfa Romeo at this point. I think definitely the team that I think has really went above expectations this year. Just with Valtteri Bottas alone, I think Bottas has just found another gear with Alfa, and the fact that he's finished behind Lewis Hamilton, literally one place behind, like 4 times already this season, it's pretty incredible just to see how good Valtteri's just suddenly become after, let's say, troublesome days towards his end of his time with Mercedes. Niccolo,
yeah, I agree with you. It's probably again an issue with pressure. He's now at racing for Alfa Romeo, and there's not so much pressure there, so he can just again enjoy the racing. But at the same time, he needs to ensure that he's doing his best there, because in case something happens at the top teams, you never know if they might need Valtteri Bottas back in one of the 3 top teams to deliver what he does best, which is being a great, consistent second driver. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by how well he's done. I mean, I think he's done a little bit better than I thought, but I'm not surprised that he's done so well, because, I mean, he's always been a very quick driver. I mean, he was up against Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, and he was obviously the clear number 2 driver there. And so, it was kind of like, him going away from Mercedes and going to Alfa Romeo was his chance to be, that main driver in the team now. Almost like he was at Williams, and he did very, very well at Williams. That's the reason why Mercedes brought him in the first place. He's always been, Lewis said it a few years ago that Valtteri is one of the best drivers on the grid, and people laughed at it, but he is one of the better drivers on the grid. He's very consistent. Yeah. He's very quick. Sometimes his racecraft is probably not as good as some of the other club guys, but he's just as quick as them.
Yeah.
If you were to have, in my opinion, a super consistent team, it would have to be like Bottas and Perez in the same team. Would be just consistency, never crashing, just reaching the finish line and ensuring you have points at the end of the season.
Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah.
The biggest thing is Valtteri's actually remembered how to overtake this year, because I think especially last year with Mercedes, he just every time he fell into the midfield, he just could not move up the grid. Yeah. Whereas you see Lewis Hamilton in the same car, and every time he made a mistake, he's bolting up the grid, no matter how much damage that car had. Whereas Valtteri was struggling in the midfield. At least this year, he's really stepped up his offensive moves, and like I said, consistency. He's been one of the most consistent drivers on the grid this year. Mm-hmm. Probably most consistent is George Russell for sure. The only driver to finish in the top 5 all year so far. But yeah, I think I will probably give Bottas, maybe a bit optimistic, but I'll give him a 9 out of 10, just because how much he's outperformed that Alfa Romeo. I mean, it is hard to tell because of Guanyu Zhou on the other seat. He is still a rookie at the end of the day, and it's a massive gap. So we don't know whether Zhou is underperforming or Valtteri is overperforming or both. But I mean, what would you give him rating at 10? I
think I'd give him an 8. I think that he's done as well as he possibly could have with the package that he has. It's a very good package, but I think he's maximized pretty much every race.
Yeah.
When he's been able to get to the finish line. But I think there has still been a couple of drivers who have been better than him this season.
Yeah.
But definitely he's been one of the outstanding drivers on the grid.
Yeah.
I agree. 8 out of 10 for Valtteri.
Yeah, I think I can see 2 and 8. And maybe what about Guanyu Zhou? I mean, he had he finished in points in his debut race. he's had quite an unlucky season. He's had quite a few mechanical failures in comparison to Valtteri, and don't forget, he is the main rookie of this year. So, well, what do you think of him so far?
Extremely hard to judge from the first 7 races, because he's had he has a good package there, and there's the potential for him to be scoring more points than he is, and for him to be high up the grid, closer to his teammate. Of course, Bottas is an excellent driver, and you don't expect Guan Yu Zhou to be, able to beat him or qualify him very regularly at all. But he's just been a bit too far away for my liking on a few too many occasions. I think he had a very good race first time round, Bahrain. He had a very good race there, coming back into the points. He impressed me. And he's shown some good speed and good racecraft and ability to overtake at times this season. But I think I just need to see more from him for me to be completely convinced. I think that he's for him being an F1 is I think he does deserve his chance. He has deserved to be in F1 to get that opportunity. But for him to, I don't think he's going to be anything special in the sport. I think that the best he can hope for is to be just a solid, midfield driver. Hopefully he can develop into that. I think so far, I probably give him a 5, because I just need to see more. I need to see, more consistency from him in future.
Yeah.
There's not much I can say, because there's not much of him in the broadcast or in any of the races, in the interviews. So there's not much I can say about him in general.
Fair. I think probably give him a 5-6 out of 10. It's just, I think, to be honest, I won't lie, it is only few. It is still only 7 races. He's only finished 5 of them as well, because I'm just looking. He finished 10th, 11th twice, 15th, 2 retirements in a row, and then he finished 16th in Monaco. And Monaco is not really the most most telling about how good the driver is relative to the grid, because Monaco is just make sure you don't hit the walls really more than anything else. But
if you qualify proper, it's more about qualify properly, and then you probably unless I will talk about it later, unless someone screws your strategy over.
We'll move on to the pain very soon. But I think Alfa has just had. I think it's just Alfa Romeo and Jones just had a really, really good start to the team.
Yeah.
They've had an excellent season so far.
Exactly.
Really good, yeah.
You can't compare with P5.
Yeah.
I mean...
if you compare to when I started following F1 in 2017, 2018, Sauber was like, it's good if they get 1 point at the end of the season. Now instead, I think they have 40. Is that? 40 or 41 points. They have 41 points right now. It's amazing. It's great to see them up there.
Yeah, fair. I think that pretty much rounds it up for P5 and P6 and the constructors, and after the break we'll basically just talk about McLaren and Mercedes. And we'll quickly move now to McLaren, 4th in the constructors. Kind of another one of the more unexpected jumps, especially knowing what's happened, especially after the first race of the season, where McLaren had one shocker with being practically the slowest car on the grid, and now 7 races later, we've had McLaren is the only team outside the top 3 to actually have a podium. And how would you be rating McLaren as a team right now? We'll start with that, Niccolo.
7. Surprised they were able to go back from that first result, because normally when you see a car on the first race of the season and you're like they're dead last, you think that's sad, especially because I've seen McLaren grow from the disasters of McLaren Honda at the time, and then them being back down there was a shame, especially because I really like Lando and Daniel. So, but now I'm very happy to see that they're both at least Lando is doing really well, and the team is back up on P4, and And yeah, that's it. They were able, as you said, to achieve a podium last week, so that was great.
Yeah, I
mean, very, very good, a bounce back from what was a very alarming first, few races, especially Bahrain was quite a shock to see them down there, to be honest. I know they had problems in pre-season testing, but to see them down there was, especially since quite a bit was expected from them at the beginning of the season. People thought they were going to be the team that was going to make the jump to challenge Mercedes and Red Bull, which they obviously haven't been, and that's a disappointment. But in terms of improvement, they've done a very good job to turn it around in such a short space of time. I think I'd probably give them a 6, because I still think that they should be doing a little better than they are, but I think that part of that is driver related, which we'll get onto.
Yeah,
I made a mistake. Podium was in Imola, not last week, but I'd give them a 6. 6 would be good.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I'll kind of give 6-7 as well. I think we might as well just talk about the driver who's not fared so well first, Daniel Ricciardo. It's just not nice. Ricciardo is such a great person, but just to see him struggling like that is pretty painful to watch.
It's also very sad, because we've seen him in Red Bull, and then when he was back in Renault, we thought, well, it's Renault, the car isn't great, we can't expect him to do much. But now finally he's got a great car, but he's constantly behind his teammate, not challenging for any good result, and it's sad and it's confusing at the same time, because you're not like McLaren put it upon themselves to sign a driver which they knew wasn't good, because that wasn't the case. Like, we know Daniel was an amazing driver with Red Bull, in certain cases even much better than Verstappen when he had some issues with crashing often. So it's confusing. I think they're confused also at McLaren, because they're like, how come this great driver is now not performing at all? So I give him a 4.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, 11 points compared to his teammates' 48. That's too far away.
Yeah.
Far too far. I mean, Lando's a great driver, but I mean, Daniel is the experienced driver in the team. Oh, not at McLaren, but the experienced driver in F1. And, he's being considered as one of the, best talents in Formula 1, and to see him down there in P12 in the championship, it's very sad to see, but at the same time, it's like, time is running out for him now. I mean, is he 32 years of age, I think he is.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, his time in F1 might be coming to an end if he doesn't step up his performance. It's been nowhere near good enough. He's struggled a lot, in comparison to Lando. And I think 4, it might be even too kind. I think, I mean, I'll stick to a 4, because obviously, only seven races of the season so far. He might pick up, and obviously the car hasn't been exceptional. It's been okay, but nowhere near good enough from Ricciardo so far, to be honest.
I mean, you just look at yes, we know about the difference to Lando Norris. I mean, Lando is proving himself to be one of the best drivers on the grid right now as well. I mean, just the consistency he had over the last 2 years has just been incredible. But you just see, from a guy who's won the last of the late breakers, you go back to 2018 Baku, where he overtook 3 cars into turn 1. It was a guy who makes and who win Monaco despite having 160 horsepower less compared to Vettel, and to still win the Monaco Grand Prix. To now just a person who struggles to get points in the point scoring car it's very painful to watch. But I think I'm going to have to be more harsh, and I will go for 3 out of 10, because just that expectation.
Yeah, I think the feeling is just confusion.
It's more.
It's confusion.
Why isn't he delivering anymore? And a bit of sadness as well, because as you said before, he's a really nice driver, and he's amazing with everyone. But
find me a photo where Ricciardo is not smiling.
Yeah,
literally, he's one of those drivers. Just
I just don't know what's happened to him. It's just he's just lost his mojo. And with it seems to be his confidence on the track.
Yeah.
And with that seems to be the performance. It's just not there.
Yeah, 100%. Probably it's just the clashing of driving styles more than anything else. But on the flip side, Lando Norris has just been incredible.
So impressed.
Yeah. It's like this thing. There's no two ways about it. The fact that he's got an Imola, a second podium in Imola, and the fact that he's got it on pure performance. It wasn't really pure luck. Yes, I mean, of course he had the slight bump with. I mean, there was Sainz who had.
Sainz had a bump. Going back to Ricciardo not even being able to understand that a wet curb is slippery. And so he crashed into Sainz there, and then of course probably Sainz would have finished better. But as you said before, it's racing, so he was there. He got a third place, a podium in a car which shouldn't be there normally, and he over delivered there.
Yeah, but I mean, what would you give Lando out of 10?
8.
Yeah, I mean, 2 points off Lewis Hamilton and a Mercedes. Not a great Mercedes, but a Mercedes. So
and Lewis Hamilton.
And Lewis Hamilton. More importantly, Lewis Hamilton.
It doesn't matter. It's still a Mercedes.
2 points off Lewis Hamilton. Yeah.
It's still Mercedes is still the third fastest car in the grid.
Exactly.
It's still 2 points behind the 7-time world champion. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
8 as well. Yeah.
Soon to be 8. Yes, but I think just Lando's just pretty much been in the top 5 drivers in the grid, without doubt. And I think we might as well just move on to quickly Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. He's not performed completely up to expectation. It's been pretty much shocked how comparable he is to Russell compared to what we really expected, knowing Lewis Hamilton's form, especially in the second half of last year. I mean, he's not been the Lewis Hamilton that we've known, have we?
No, to be honest, he hasn't been the Lewis Hamilton we know and expect. He's just this season. He seems to. It's not necessarily that he's driving erratically or driving badly. He just seems to be just a little bit off the pace of Russell a bit too often, and not completely off the pace, but just a tenth or two, and you just don't really expect that. He just seems to be. Not getting the rubber to green as well. He seems to be, in qualifying, getting unlucky. I mean, Monaco, he got unlucky. Obviously he got unlucky in the race in Spain. Came back well, but he's been unlucky with safety cars earlier in the season as well, in comparison to his teammate. I still think that, it's been a little bit, there's been, I think it's so exaggerated a little bit how poor his season has been. I don't think he's been as bad as people make out at all.
Hasn't.
And I definitely expect him to pick it up. But there is the question of what if he doesn't? What if he just stays behind Russell? That would be a big shock.
To be honest, I think it was 2 years ago when Russell had to come in instead of Bottas in Bahrain. Was it a couple of years ago?
Yeah, back in 2020 was it with Russell and Bottas.
Exactly. At that point I understood Russell is 100% is better than Hamilton, and once they'll both get into a Mercedes he will be better than Hamilton because of age alone, because Russell is much younger, he's fresher also in a physical sense. I mean, Hamilton's got an age right now, and so for sure there is a strong possibility that at the end of the season Russell will outperform Hamilton, and this will not remove logically all of the championships he's won in the past, but at a certain point that's what happens. Like you are going to get into a top team, and a stronger driver will come in.
I mean, I think with me the whole drop off of Lewis Hamilton compared to Russell probably just happened earlier than expected. I did expect Russell to outperform Hamilton this year, mainly because because Russell's just used to having a more underperforming car, whereas Lewis Hamilton's for the past 7-8 years he's had a championship contending car, or a car that pretty much just dominated the whole grid, whereas now he's come back towards the midfield, whereas Russell has actually come up the midfield in comparison. So I feel like Russell's in a much more comfortable position than Lewis Hamilton, and obviously like you said, there is an age difference as well, something like 15 years difference between it's two completely different generation of drivers. So
And the sad thing is, there was no way that at the end of the season he was going to retire, winning or losing the championship, because of the situation he has with Nico Rosberg. So he could have never retired at the end of the season. So I don't know, but it would have been again the great end to it all. No, it's the end of the regulations. You've done amazing. You've won so many championships. Call it a day. No, instead now he's in a car which isn't as great as it was. For sure, Mercedes will be much better next season when they understand everything. They will for sure be competing again for the championship, but I'm not sure if Hamilton will be there next year, because there's a possibility of him leaving. So I don't know.
I still think he has more to give, though. I think that it would be too premature to say that he should walk away from the sport now. He's still very quick. I mean,
no, there's no doubt about that, but I feel like for every sport there's a point in which like I've given what I can give, and it would be maybe too much to keep on going without knowing what could actually happen. That's all.
Maybe like Federer in tennis.
Yeah, no, it's that.
Yeah. Or maybe even Jimmy Anderson in cricket.
Yeah.
But because like he's 40 and he's still one of the best bowlers in the world right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think especially I don't see Lewis retiring this year. Maybe at the end of next year, because I think that's when his contract expires as well. And I think that's when he might want to give it time to F1 and just basically just move on to other endeavors. Especially if Mercedes doesn't step up next year and become a championship contender. Even though I wouldn't be surprised if they are next year, especially when Mercedes
for sure next year.
Yeah.
They're fantastic ability to develop a car mid-season and. Especially across seasons, just their development speed is just unbelievably good.
I wouldn't be surprised if by mid-season Russell will be able to win some races and remove some points from Red Bull. That may happen really, really easily, because, as you said, they're great at developing a car really quickly.
100%. And probably we'll quickly touch on Russell. I mean, there's not much to say. He's just been at it all season long, all 7 races he's had top 5 finishes, most consistently finishing driving good, probably because he's had more luck with reliability and lucky with safety cars and whatnot, but you can't just deny he's just been up there this whole time. He's been great,
really good. Is he ahead of Carlos Sainz in the championship?
I think he's he's P4 in the championship. I think he's
by a point. That's some effort. I mean, considering that the amount of issues that Mercedes have had this year with porpoising, but not just that, having a draggy car, and not just being well off the pace. Sometimes they're up to 8-9 tenths off the pace of the Ferrari or the Red Bulls. But he's still being able to. I mean, performances like Spain, I mean, wow, like the defending against Verstappen is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, that just reminded me of like Hamilton back in his heyday,
Yeah.
It's almost like you've got this young driver here who's been inspired by his senior teammate, and he's like, do you know what? I'm going to become Lewis Hamilton of this team, and I'm going to become that guy to take this team forward.
Yeah.
And he's got his 7-time world champion teammate there, and he's going to leave him in the dust. It seems like that's what it might happen right now. I mean, I'd give him an 8, potentially a 9.
I think I'll probably stretch to a 9, to be honest.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah.
I can stretch to 9, but because Russell's just you can't ask for more from Russell, to be honest, especially given the car he's given, and probably just quickly round out Mercedes's performance as a whole.
6.
I'll probably go. I can't agree more.
Yeah, I'd say so too. I think obviously the car is not what they expected it to be, but they have done credit to them. They've done a good job at being able to identify the problems and start to make an attempt to fix them so far this season. And I think that they will, as we move throughout the season and past summer break, I think that they will be able to start challenging for race wins again.
Yeah. I think I can't agree more. It's just Mercedes have been very good with what they've got this year, but I think the fact that Mercedes was hardly expected to be at the front, but they're not, kind of just ruins it for them this year. But I think after the break, we'll basically just run it off. We'll talk about the big two, Ferrari and Red Bull, just quickly go over how they've been performing. And we might as well just quickly finish off now with the top two teams, Ferrari and Red Bull, who mostly have been very, very impressive this year, obviously, because they're contending in the top. But we might as well start with Ferrari. We were just talking about Ferrari before the break. Just how would you rate the team in general? I mean, I know we've had the incident strategy back in Monaco just now, but what do you?
I'd give it. I know we're not doing fractions. It was a 6.5.
Oh, no, it's fine. You can do fractions.
Yeah, 6.5 because it's not a 7. It's not a 6, which would be too harsh because they have improved massively compared to the last 2 years. But a 6.5 because this is it's their year to win the championship. They finally have a car which is much better than Mercedes. They have a rival which they didn't expect, which is Red Bull, but they have to remember they are against the power couple of Formula One, which is Adrian Newey and Christian Horner. So they need to understand that they're racing against the best designer of F1 history probably, and they have to make a car which is better than theirs, and as a chassis it is not, because Red Bull has always been the better chassis, so they have a great engine, and they don't need to ruin their own races. No, if there's what happened in Spain is okay. Like it's normal for a car to get a DNF in a race, but that will bring probably to a penalty later on in the season because they had to change the whole engine for Charles. But they need to ensure that when they are in P1 and P3 at the start of the race, they finish in the same way or better, because they can't afford to lose against Red Bull this year, because otherwise it would be a mess in the following years for them.
Yeah.
It feels like we've gone back to that sort of area, those years between 2016 and 2019 when they, for the most part, they produced very good cars during that time, and they had in Sebastian Vettel, a driver who was capable of winning a championship. And obviously they were up against the best driver in the sport at the time, like they are now. I think Max Verstappen most people would agree that he's the best driver in the sport at the moment. And when you're up against the best driver in the sport, you just can't afford to make mistakes, really. No. Especially not big mistakes like strategy. Exactly. Especially when a driver's leading a race, and a race like Monaco where, overtaking is practically impossible. How can you mess up the race that badly for your great driver? Everyone
knows, also we here talking, track position is everything in Monaco. Exactly. You can't have a car go behind other cars and do a two-stop strategy when some people are saying that a one-stop is okay. You can't make those mistakes in Monaco. Also because there's always to consider the morale factor. No? You have a car which starts first, you want to finish first. You can't have a car which was about to win and then breaks down. Then you have a car which was about to win and then the strategy ruins the whole thing. So you can't have those mistakes anymore, because you're going to lose the championship to Red Bull. And we were saying later, there is a risk if Ferrari ruins it all, which is possible. They can either be, I am convinced they are better at chasing than at being followed. So they can chase Red Bull and maybe arrive to the end of the season where they can actually go on and win the championship, or they can make a complete mess from now onwards, keep looping downwards and end up behind Mercedes, which is possible if Mercedes starts winning some races.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the two.
Yeah, they're definitely hanging by a thread right now. And probably let's quickly just do an individual criticism.
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc, as obviously he is one of the two championship protagonists for this year, as far as we know. How do you give his rating out of 10?
Generally excellent. qualifying magnificent. I mean, there's times where he's been qualifying like 3-4 attempts better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's ahead of driver like Max Verstappen, who is ridiculously fast. So his qualifying pace has always been superb. And generally he's been very good in the races. He generally brings it home from first. If he qualifies first, he normally goes on to win it or be in the top 2. But just, he seems to make these strange errors at the most important times, which, like, in this kind of championship fight against someone like Max Verstappen, you just can't afford to make. And ultimately, I think that's probably the difference between the two drivers. I think that in terms of speed, they're very closely matched. Even in terms of racecraft, they're very closely matched. We've seen some great battles, Bahrain, Jeddah, we've seen some great battles between them. But when it comes to those pivotal moments when you need a driver to keep their cool, to bring it home, to, not make mistakes, to be solid, he seems to errors creep into his racing, and that I think that's what's going to cost him a championship if Red Bull continue to be solid as they have been recently. I think that he's had a very good season. I think I'd probably give him an 8 so far, but I don't think he's going to win the championship, and I think it's because of those errors that he makes.
Yeah. No, it's going to be hard for him to win, especially now, because once you see your competitor being 10 points ahead. Is it
something like that? Yeah, he's about 10 points ahead now.
9 points ahead. You start thinking, how many races do I need to win for him? And it's not much, because as soon as you're first a couple of times and the second driver is second, you're able to get that difference, because there's a huge gap between winning a race and arriving second. It's 25 or 26 points against 18. So it's not hard to do, but he needs to get his mind straight to it and don't make mistakes, and then have a car which doesn't break down, or a team which doesn't make him lose. Because for now, apart from, as you said before, the incident in Imola, he hasn't made mistakes.
No.
It's just been down to the team letting him down. So he needs to be able to show that he can. The team needs to show him that they can help him to win the championship.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
Also, you will need something with. You're going to need help with Carlos Sainz, because Sainz has not had the cleanest season, especially in the last 4 or 5 races. He's had anything but a clean season. Just the amount of gravel. I mean, he seems to like the gravel more than the actual tarmac, which is not exactly what Charles Leclerc exactly needs with a second driver right now.
And also, he needs to remember that he is a second driver. After that, you've made that many mistakes in the first races of the season. You cannot make calls to the pit crew and be like, I want to come in this lap. You wait, you're the second driver right now. Charles is something like 50 points ahead of you in the championship. You have to wait for him to stop when it is better for him to stop and for us to win the race. You can't start moaning on the radio about having to stop before because you want to win a race. And also he has, which is probably the hardest part of his job, he has to remove the stress of the fact that he's driving for Ferrari, because those were the mistakes he made going into the gravel, etc., were because of him being overstressed of the fact that he is driving for Ferrari.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that analysis of Sainz's season so far. Yeah. He's a great driver, of course. I mean, his first season at Ferrari, he outperformed. I wouldn't say outperformed Charles Leclerc, but he outscored him, which is a very impressive thing to do. I always thought that Leclerc would, in a competitive car, be, the stronger driver and be the one who's challenging for the championships. But I definitely expected Carlos to be much closer than he has been this season. I mean, even when he's been P2, he's been just too far behind his teammate. Yeah. He's never really been on the pace. No. I think he needs a sort of like a breakout weekend, a weekend where he just has a solid weekend and leads from the front and wins. That might revitalize his season.
Yeah, I mean, say if Monaco, to be honest, Monaco could have been one of those weekends if he wasn't held up by Latifi, or, Monaco is a track where you can actually overtake. The problem with Monaco, you can't overtake, so Red Bull could take the chance by mediums and having ridiculous amount of grading on the tyres and still win the race with Perez. And I think we might as well just finish off now with Red Bull. Perez has just been an excellent second driver. You can't really ask, Red Bull can't really ask much more from Perez other than really directly challenging Verstappen for the wins.
Yeah, I mean, Perez is just 6 points behind Leclerc. So there is also a risk that as we said before, Perez being super consistent, and maybe Max getting into some crash later on into the season with Leclerc or with some other situations. We may see Perez risking maybe a win of more races and maybe even the championship, because you don't know, just because of how consistent he is. And when he has an opportunity to win a race or to get a podium, you're sure he's gonna be there. He's not gonna get emotional at any point of a race.
Yeah.
So,
I mean the step up as well from Perez from last season to this season, really good. I mean, I think he's closed the average gap between him and Verstappen in qualifying to I think it's under a tenth now.
Yeah.
Which is really exceptional considering how quick Verstappen is. I mean, Verstappen rarely gets out qualified by teammates.
Yeah.
He basically has the best qualifying record in F1 at the moment.
Yeah. One of them.
One of them at least. He's up there with the best. And I mean, Sergio's been so good this season. He's been, not only has he been extremely quick, he's just been, most races you just see him P2, P3, always where he needs to be.
That's why they renewed his contract.
Exactly. Yeah. But he's been he's been even better than a number 2 driver this season. I mean, if luck had gone his way, he'd be leading championship at the moment.
Oh yeah, I mean, he could have won in Saudi if it wasn't for the badly timed safety car.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have won in Spain. I think Max was still gonna, but if it wasn't for Team Orders, there would have been a good fight between Max and Checo. And then obviously, he put a commanding drive to win in Monaco as well.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think he's amazing. We are so lucky for him to still be in F1, even though he risked being out of it because of Stroll taking over Force India and now Aston Martin. So it's very lucky for us to see him there. He's a great person to have in the sport, and no frills. That's what I like about him. It's just I get in, I race, I'm amazing, and then I go back home.
Checo is amazing. I mean, so can't really complain much about that. And probably just rounding off, Max Verstappen, probably the person to run over with the championship. Would you agree?
No, I think the championship is his to lose.
Yeah, exactly.
He can't. He's so great, always on the podium, unless those 2 times where they had the reliability issues. He doesn't have those issues he had in 2018, where he was crashing into other people or into or out of the track. So he's just. It's his championship to win again for the second time in a row. He's got the momentum, the team, the teammate. It's all right for him.
Yeah, he's in the most optimal position to be in especially with the new regulations right now. I mean, he's got the fastest car on the grid pretty much. Mm-hmm. He's got Adrian Newey as the design head. He's got Christian Horner. As much as he likes running his mouth, he is a fantastic team principal. You can't deny it.
And it's his team.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's what I mean is it's Max Verstappen's team.
Yeah. It literally is.
It's it could be called Max Verstappen Racing, Red Bull.
I mean, you can pretty much say that Max Verstappen's Christian Horner's adopted son at this
point.
No,
it is. That's what they've been doing. They've done it extremely right. They got him when he was very young. They got the talent up, and it's working perfectly.
Not to mention, for a guy this experienced in Formula, he's not even 25.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are drivers who are literally the same age as him. So you talk about George Russell, Lando Norris, who's literally only in the 3rd or 4th season, whereas Verstappen's in his 8th or 9th at this point.
He started in 2016, 6th season now, I think. Or was it before?
No, 2015 he started. 2016 is when he went to Red Bull because he won his debut.
You're right.
So this is actually
2015.
18, 19, 20. his 8th season in Formula 1.
Yeah, no, that's why then when he goes against Leclerc, he's so much better because he's got much more experience and at the same time the body of a 24-year-old, which really helps.
Yeah.
I mean, I think by the end of his career, I expect him to be regarded as one of the greatest Formula 1 drivers of all time, if not.
Yeah.
I mean, Hamilton needs to be looking over his shoulders because, like, this guy, if he has an era of like Hamilton did, where he's in either the fastest car or one of the fastest cars, and he stays in F1 long enough, which I think he will, this guy could match Hamilton's achievements in a sense of like championships. He could get to 6 or 7, but I expect him to. Yeah,
if it's not championships, it's surely the number of wins because he already has a lot of wins to his name. He's got
24 wins. That's about almost. That's kind of half of Alan Prost.
Yeah,
more than Kimi.
Yeah,
more than Kimi. Kimi only had like
21.
Yeah, he had 21 wins and 18 pole positions.
Yeah. So it's 21 wins and he had one championship.
Yeah.
And so, he's up there.
Like, Verstappen's already reaching that, like, 65 podiums, 24 wins. Already, despite not even being 25, he's got 148 race starts already under his belt. That's pretty much, that is almost halfway to Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
300 and something because they had the whole thing where it was 300 races.
I don't know if Fernando has...
He has 300.
Okay, I don't know if he's actually passed Kimi yet, because I know Fernando.
I don't know.
Fernando, because by the end of the season, definitely Fernando Alonso he'll beat Kimi's record.
Yeah.
But it's pretty impressive pretty impressive how good he is as a driver.
No, I mean he has to win the championship this year. Something weird must happen. Either he breaks down a lot of times, or Leclerc really becomes that amazing driver, which I saw some races in replays in F2 where he actually battles for position against Verstappen race after race.
And
it's just them two battling for
he'll have to
position.
go further than Senna, Prost, Jim Clark levels.
As numbers, yes, for sure.
As a driver, so
also because there's 22 races a year, so it's easier for you to win more.
But I think that kind of wraps it up really in terms of the driver reviews. Really, so it's pretty much drivers that we wanted to do well has just slumped even more. Drivers who expected to excelled even more. To be honest, I think that's kind of the whole thing we can really take out from this. I mean, I think pretty much unanimous decision for Verstappen to win the championship and
Red Bull to win the other championship probably.
Pretty much. So that is me, your host Chinmay, with my guests Niccolo and Elijah. Thank you very much for coming on today and discussing about this. And thank you for listening to the Warwick F1 show.